get this thing started. Respect everybody's time and get things moving. All right. First order of business is to find out who's here. Looks like we're all here except for a select person's representative, and plus we have our most senior alternate. Okay. Jerry Becker. Okay. So you will not be voting. You will not be a voting member.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, review and approve the minutes from the July 10 meeting. A motion to accept?
I'll second that.
In a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That was quick. I say thank you to David for doing a great job.
Dave, you're doing a great job.
All right, public comment, any matter that was not before the planning board this evening, according to the agenda, and we just happened to have something. And that is that I got a contact from Kevin.
Yes.
A couple of days ago saying, we've got this thing going on up on a class 6 road, and according to the RSA, we need to run it by the planning board. So, and not to hold anything up and make your way to hold over one. I said, let's come on and do that. So, Kevin, you want to present?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Yep, I'll come right up.
Please.
You'll see the quick handout, because, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been up there or whatever, but here's a picture of the place. And that's basically, if you look at the schematic there, the plans, I mean, it's just a building. Basically, the new building's gonna be the same size minus the deck. But we're also gonna put up there's like a pavilion or pergola or whatever, just a roof section, you know, with a 4-post, kind of like something behind the library, but with a complete roof. And so anyway, this place was built in 1960. It's in pretty much disrepair. I mean, it's, you know, nice and
Okay.
paint and, yeah, oh yeah, sure. Sorry. You guys want one too?
Yeah, I gave you mine.
Oh, okay, there you go. Sorry. And so basically, it had already had asbestos abatement, so there's no asbestos, so it's good to take down. And if you look at the actual property, you can see up in the upper hand corner there, it's, and the next one's kind of more detailed, that's all. But basically you want to take down the building, build the exact same.
Where is it, Kevin?
It's up Iron Mountain Road.
Okay.
It's probably
I
about,
can't read.
yeah, about let's say about halfway up on the right. So, yeah. And so anyway, if you're looking at the building there on the second page, or like I said, it's up in the upper hand corner, I guess you could call it. And anyway, there's a deeded right of way through there, and he wants to get that away from that. There's a deeded right of way to another cabin that goes out back. And so this would be only moved about 50 feet downhill. On the third page, that's really not to scale because we're going to make sure that it's 50 feet away from the center line of the road, and the setbacks are okay. Is it 5 acres of land that you have up there? 5. Yeah, it is 5 acres. Yeah. So the whole lot's 5 acres, and like I said, he's only using a small portion. Everything's marked. I went up there the other day, and I found all the pins. They all have ribbons on them. Everything's pretty straightforward.
All right, can you explain why you're talking to us about this?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. So there's an RSA in the state RSAs, I guess, and the very first thing is basically to get permission from the selectmen and to notify the planning board about this. I think it's to make sure that all the zoning regulations and everything else are followed.
Is it because it's on class 6 road?
Yeah, it's on a class 6 road because
Or is that?
basically there's wording in there not allowing to have building permits or whatever, but the state has turned around and said, well, it's okay, we'll select it as a planning board.
Yeah, it's sort of.
Yeah.
But they signed a waiver for all the
Right.
fire protection, police protection road.
Yeah, and that's the next thing, item 2 and 3. Item 2 is basically telling the owner about the, there's no fire
We could do
protection,
anything
police,
for you.
police and everything else.
Perfect.
And, the road, basically, it's saying the road's not, is not up to the town to maintain it, but the town does maintain it. And then the third thing is to actually create a waiver, have the homeowner sign, and that's gonna be recorded in the registry of deeds.
Yep.
So this, basically, it's this building and this, per building.
And the new building obviously will meet all your building codes and all the other.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, there's no heat, there's an outhouse on the site. He wants to put a composting toilet in, which is fine by DS regulations. There's no water, there's no electricity up there. It's basically a cabin, just a newer one, that's all. So,
So Kevin, are you representing the town tonight as the building inspector, or are you representing the customer?
no, I'm representing the building inspector, just because the regulations, it's a little confusing with a lot of people asking a lot of questions about, not allowing a building permit on we don't issue building permits, basically that way.
It's not exactly clear why the planning board really needs to get involved with this, other than that we have the opportunity, if we really, think something has a bad smell to it, if you'll excuse the expression, that we would say something and indicate that we would have an issue with it. And that's why I asked the question around the building codes. And I know, Dick, you've said it many times, anytime we get a request in where we're taking a non-standard building and replacing it with a better structure
That's the way I'm looking at it.
that is going to be better all around, then that's a good move for us, I think.
And also, I think we've done the disclaimer before, didn't we, with McLean up there?
That is correct, yep.
And they just signed off on accepting that, we'll do our best, but you're not gonna really have fire, ambulance.
Right.
And the town does some maintenance for life safety reasons on that road.
And that road right now is in really good shape. The road department has done a really good job on grading it, and with all the rain and stuff, like I said, I was just up there, I was like, wow.
But I only say that because we don't want to get into the position of, we have to maintain this road.
Right, yeah.
We do not
exactly.
have to.
Yep.
But in the, spirit of
Mhm.
life safety, we do, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. It's much easier to keep up with it than to let it just go into disrepair and then try to go to repair it.
Can you imagine the washouts we could have
Well, the
had?
road,
Oh, I know,
as
yeah.
Kevin pointed out, the road was done a remarkable
They
job.
did, yeah. They really have. So,
Any questions,
I mean,
discussion?
all over here.
So this is just for our information, is that correct?
That's basically,
It-
yeah.
it
Yeah,
is.
Yeah.
And if we saw something
Yeah, if we're,
terrible,
if we're offended by it in some way, then we would identify what that is so that you could address it and make
Yeah.
sure that the homeowner
Right.
is aware of what issues we might have and see whether or not we could work those through. But if there's,
No comments, Sebastian?
What was the size of the lot?
5 acres. Yep. Yeah, there's almost, I forget how much frontage on that road too.
Says 600.
Yeah, I think that's correct, yeah.
I don't know, it doesn't meet
500
frontage
or something,
requirement.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, frontage is an issue.
Yeah, he's got plenty there. It's existing.
How about the sky exposure? I mean, he's got plenty of that, right?
Great view up there. Yeah, that's it.
It does,
It does have a nice view.
It's a wonderful property. It's something to be there, even. It's just,
Yes.
it's fantastic.
Is that building behind it, Chandler's?
It's the first, Chandler is in the back.
Right.
Yeah, this is that white little cabin.
Chandler's is the right of way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's who's in the back there, Chandler.
That's a gorgeous view from there.
That's another.
He's got a
that's
really
another
nice
spot
lot.
too.
It's digging around this weekend.
It's gone through the planning board.
Okay, all right, good, all right, thank you.
Do you need a vote? You want to vote?
I don't think any vote was required, I believe, I don't know, I don't see
It'll be in the minutes then, anyway, no comment.
All right.
And before you go, Kevin,
Yeah.
do you want to talk about the ADU?
I could, yeah, I think I'm gonna hang out, but I think Scott and me talked, I was talking to Scott one day, and I noticed, there's 2 houses in town here who, over the last couple of years, they put an ADU in, and, now they're in the process of short-term renting it.
Yep.
And I know Jackson's always had that on in their zoning about that ADUs or whatever. And then the state was like 4 years ago or something, they came out making towns put some kind of zoning in for ADUs. So I
Which
think,
we've done.
yeah, so I think the intent was to, have was for your kids to stay there, or caretakers, or long-term renters, but not short-term renters.
Yeah, and then, in fact, I took a look to see that, because we just had the one on 7th. And there is nothing in the state regs that you can rely on to say that short-term rentals can be restricted in an ADU. And there were some specific comments around that in the New Hampshire Municipal Association data that said you cannot, the restrictions you put on an ADU are similar to any single family.
So they're treating the main house as the other unit as the same, you can't put restrictions on it. Even so, because I know, I was watching the zoning, ZBA on Channel 2 or whatever with Conway, and they're like 5 districts, they do not allow that. So it seems like it's always been in there. So, you can rent your main home, but you can't rent the ADU, which, I mean, I find it kind of, whatever. It's like everyone might wind up with a little hotel in the back of your yard if you got the capacity.
The maximum square footage on an ADU is 800.
No, in town it's 1,000,
That's
up to 2 bedrooms, and it's all based on your septic. If, you got the capacity and land mass.
Yeah, there's nothing in our zoning ordinance that prohibits it.
You're going to look at what Connor's doing and see
Yeah.
if that's,
So I wonder if it's ever been tested. I'm just saying, you look around town here and it's, we all know you can't find a place to rent. The young generation they're leaving this area in droves. I know I've got a 30-year-old daughter and a 25-year-old son. All their friends are, they can't find a place to live.
Yeah.
And I think just between all the towns, at least the tiny little, littlest thing you can do, even if, it's just a couple places that you can turn into long-term rentals, I don't know.
Yeah, we have nothing that we can hang our hat on to prevent that.
Yep.
hopefully we can do something positive about it.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So, All right, well, maybe we'll keep looking and see what we can do. I don't know, might be something, or rewrite the ADU.
Well, I'm curious about what Connor's doing. Just,
Yeah, yeah,
Because it would seem to me that
yep,
it seems more likely that the state wouldn't allow us to do something like that.
Right now, the state prohibits you from treating it differently than you do.
Right, so I'm curious what Connor is up to, although things haven't gone terribly well in Acton
So is Conway looking to prohibit any rental of an ADU or just short-term rentals?
no, that's just short-term rentals, yeah. And I don't know if it's based on owner occupied either, that might be another thing too. Like if, you're in the main house and you're renting out, your short-term rental. But I think if you're renting both and you're not there, it's like this way, it's like a 2-unit hotel. So, I never thought, I don't think the intent was to allow that. And maybe the state should, maybe it should be brought up in the, state house about that. And
There's an awful lot about what the state has not addressed
yeah.
on the short-term rentals. Or they offered out ADUs to increase the amount of housing.
Yep.
And that was the intention, and, you take a look at what the thrust is for any kind of development, you just want more housing units. But what it doesn't address is that the primary driver of all our revenues in the state level are from tourism.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for them to say, oh by the way, we're going to, we've offered this out, and by the way, we're going to shrink the number of housing units available for, second home owners and that sort of thing. So, I agree with you
Yeah.
philosophically,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see any place right now that we can hang our hat on.
Yeah.
And the legislature has no interest in making it any more restrictive than it is.
And for owner occupied, there's no way you're gonna get that one.
Oh, I know, yeah. I mean, I could at least see they're not living there and renting out 2 places. That's a little different story.
Yeah.
At least in Jackson, if the main house is permanently occupied, owner or full-time renter,
Yep.
that's an incentive to do that so that they can then use the ADU as a unlimited short-term rental. Right now, if it's not in the commercial zone and the main house isn't full-time occupied, they're limited to 30 rentals. But if the main house is
Right,
full-time occupied, then they have unlimited rentals. So there's a little bit of incentive to at least for one of the 2 properties to be full-time occupied and either owner or renter.
What is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough thing.
Yep.
Well, all right, well, thank you.
Like your T-shirt.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I was over there at the air show. That was a good air show.
Kevin,
Yes.
told it on the sign, new driveway.
Well, thank you for
Route 16.
coming before us to talk about it. We
Are they
appreciate
gonna
it.
get a permit?
Well, they do have it from the state.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck on your property.
Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment on something that's not listed on our agenda?
Just let me just make sure this.
Hank's not talking. All right. We're a little bit late, but please, our next is the a project update from either Nick or Kate, or one or both, or
Yeah.
Nick is fine.
Yeah, Nick.
we'll try not to call you Peter or whatever.
That's okay. Tell me
That was
Peter,
funny.
too.
That was my fault. sorry.
You mind if I pull a chair up?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
And the emails are all from you, so I forgot.
Yeah, but I have to take responsibility because I reviewed it and I didn't catch it.
That's all right.
Yeah, so, good evening. So a little, just kind of courtesy check-in, project update, just to kind of let you all know where we're at and that we're you know, we're still working on plans with Mike and our engineer. So just to give you a quick update, so we ran into a little bit of a hiccup where we found that there was a discrepancy between what Carroll County has recorded on file for Mike's lot, the 30-acre lot, and what the town has on record. So this 1990 plan is what the town essentially has on record, and the county has something different. So essentially the lot is already subdivided, is what it kind of boils down to, into 4 lots. And what we're going to be seeking is actually a boundary line adjustment and probably a lot combination. And so kind of one of the questions I have, and I can show you the lot line adjustment plan that we have currently, but question I might have for the board is, can we do a boundary line or lot line adjustment and a lot combination in concurrence so that we can create the lot that we need? And then there'll be kind of a 2-step process where we actually will come back with this lot for subdivision and probably seek a cluster subdivision application for that lot. But I can kind of show you. So this is the lot as it exists today. There's 4 lots. I think one of them might technically be conforming under the current zoning ordinance, but for the most part, they're either too small or they don't have road frontage, so they're not very useful lots. What we had initially contemplated doing when we kind of discovered this discrepancy was retaining all 4 lots and essentially just adjusting every boundary. So we're essentially getting ourselves back to the same place where I initially came to the board. We're still envisioning this lot 3 would be our home lot, and then creating essentially as big of a lot as we can create for what would be lot 2. And then we actually have a lot 4, so keeping all 4 lots from the 1990 plan. And then this larger lot 1 would be Mike's home lot up and back. So what we've most recently discussed is actually doing this boundary line adjustment, but then also combining lots 2 and 4, because without doing that, we wouldn't have enough road frontage on lot 2 to actually apply for a subdivision for the housing. So in order to kind of keep things moving forward, we're hoping that this will be the plan that we'll submit with our application. And we'll have this, it'll be a lot line adjustment and a lot.
How different is that from the original approach, though? Is the same end result, or?
The same, we're doing like.
I mean, calling it a different thing.
We're kind of going all the way around the block to get back to the same place.
To the same place, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I hope I'm not overcomplicating, I'm trying to boil it down as simply as possible, but.
For anybody who hasn't played through this, it's confusing. And that is that that original plan that we were looking at, we thought we were looking at one big large lot.
Right.
Because that's what's on the tax thing. It says lot 1, and it's 30 whatever.
30.43 acres.
And so, but what's on file with the county is the original 4 lots that were there in a survey that was done in 1990.
Yep.
And that's what's recorded in the county records. There's no update to that as far as we can tell.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't find, we did between last time you guys talked, Julie went through, we went through, I tried to, we all tried to find where this combination of the 4 lots into 1 lot occurred. There's no record of it.
Are they all owned by the same person?
Yes.
Mike owns all 4. I'm not sure if they're all the same entity.
They're all owned by the same entity. the same
Okay,
person.
that's
Yeah.
the part I didn't know, but, okay, they're all his property. And I think even in some interim things, they may have confused on some of the other things, some of their legal documents, some of the,
Well, the deed refers to lot 1, And unfortunately, Lot 1 exists on the 1990 plan, and on the Lot 1 is also what the overall 30-acre parcel is called. So there's confusion.
Yeah, so it refers to the same thing, but there's two different definitions for lot one.
Exactly, right, exactly.
So, bottom line is that these guys have 4 lots instead of 1 lot. And instead of having to subdivide one large lot, they basically are, if I'm understanding correctly, in order to get where they need to go, they need to do border line adjustments and maybe some lot merging. I didn't know if that was necessary or if you could just, I'm not sure what you can do with border line adjustment, to be honest. If you could just, you have 4 lines and.
As long as you don't create a non-conforming lot in doing so.
Yeah, so technically, as I look at this plan, Mike's Lot 1 doesn't need frontage, but it doesn't have frontage.
Not on 16, but it
No,
has
no,
frontage
no,
on.
Well, it doesn't have 150 foot, the
Right.
minimum required frontage, which we were kind of questioning whether it's necessary or not. And I think the town engineer first said that perhaps it wasn't even necessary, but according to the zoning, you need a minimum frontage. So
Is that lot 1 of the 4 lots or lot 1 of the big lot?
Yes.
is it-
One
Um,
for, one for.
I didn't follow it, sorry.
But you said the lot doesn't have enough frontage, is that lot 1 of 4 lots, or is that the whole lot that doesn't have frontage? It's just a lot 1 of the 4.
The whole lot does, the whole lot
It's just a
absolutely
lot
does.
1 of the
Yeah.
4.
The whole lot has like 480 feet in frontage.
So when it was merged, we were sort of eliminating non-conforming.
But lot one, you're not doing anything to,
We're not doing anything to lot
so
1.
nothing's gonna touch on lot.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I was gonna look at
It's
the,
two, you said it's 3 and 4 that you're gonna play with, because you're gonna take
What are you
two.
talking about?
That's two.
yeah,
You said
and-
this is all
and,
just one lot,
I'm just
because that's
looking
what
here,
it is on
so,
the tax rolls.
Yeah.
so the 1990, so I guess we're not making a non-conformity,
The
we're
actual
retaining a non-conformity,
lots,
which I think is different.
as they were,
Well, you're reverting to it.
let's see if we can
Yes, we're not creating a new non-conformity.
They're already not conforming.
They're already non-conforming.
Right.
And I think every lot.
Right, well, in other words, they were non-conforming, they became conforming when they were merged at the town level.
And
But because that didn't get
At the same
recorded,
time.
at the
in
same
a
time.
sense,
They're
they're still non-conforming.
Right.
So you're kind of reverting back to the.
Oh, So they're gonna make it one big
Also,
lot,
2-year one.
and then, actually, what they're gonna do is
Essentially,
they're-
what,
uh,
I wish we had a camera right here so we
Let's see.
could. Essentially, what we're doing is we're pushing lot 1 back.
Oh,
So
so
what,
that
just
could
what
go
Mike's,
That's
Mike
where it
needs,
says,
we're pushing this back.
the 1990
We're pushing lot 4.
internal lots,
We're creating lot 3 becomes
those were the original lots.
pushing everything this way. And lot 2 becomes the house. So this, so
This
we're
was
taking lot
lot
2. and
one,
giving-
Give it from.
2,
Yeah.
3,
So
and
And
3
now,
lots.
and then we want to eliminate.
And in order for them to
Combine
get
two.
to the
So we
right
can
place,
increase our-
they're gonna have 3
So
lots.
at the end of the day, there's gonna be 3 lots.
It'd be 3 lots, which is where we started.
The
Right.
remaining lot
And a subdivision, I think, would be required to change.
doesn't have enough road frontage.
That
That's-
one lot
He
is
said he has
required.
spur versus.
Yeah, so that's,
Change the use.
that's what I was assuming, is that we might have a
So
two-step
that's your question,
process where we
right?
do.
Yeah, the only frontage is gonna end up having is here.
In a merger at the same time.
Get some
which seems pretty
frontage.
straightforward.
Um,
Because
And
that
should
might
come
have
back
also
for the
50
subdivision, which I
That's-
think
no,
we
it's
need
not.
to anyway, because we need to
But
work out. the
first-
plans.
So they are dealing with something that's what's registered in Calhoun County. That's
We
it. Yeah.
spoke
I
with
mean,
Mike.
our tax map is
the other night,
fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
so trying to
It's
get a handle
registered.
on
Right.
That's why council.
what the limitations are.
And so he already has a non-conforming lot, because he's built it,
Just-
and he built it
Personally
on,
feel that
with the idea that it was one
additional
pole,
units is good.
and it wasn't.
Yeah, so there's, I mean,
Yeah, it's the driveway, the road that goes in.
So it does.
that's
create
the,
a
that's probably gonna be
It does.
the zoning
But he
limitation and maybe
had
the
a
financial limitation too.
But it, well, that's right.
Right,
But it's also like.
Well,
the-
financial in the
can't
sense
give
that
up
you have
on-
to make a town
Yeah,
According to the
Standard
way this is
road.
written, he doesn't have it now.
At the
So he's not giving up
proper
anything.
pitch, it's gonna cost a lot.
Oh,
it's
so
it's
he
gonna
has,
create a lot of
he's
impact.
non-conforming.
There's also
Playing
limitations.
non-conforming now.
Right, so what we can.
That's why he's not concerned with the
Right,
flood.
I mean, the
Right.
planning board has some ability to,
But we don't want to make anything more
Yeah.
non-conforming.
a little bit, that's the only thing.
I'm even thinking the amount of topography.
I think we have to combine these
The problem
conversations.
is
Yeah.
that
Yeah, they
we allowed
have-
him to build right here when he didn't have any frontage on that
We're
property.
not making
Other than
anything,
this.
we're not making anything, we're not.
But you can,
gonna make-
And
you
that is access.
We're not making it-
no,
Yeah, we should probably combine these discussions, because I think we're probably.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up,
Okay.
remember,
I'm just bringing us up to speed.
They,
Oh, okay, okay. So we originally came to the board with a 3-lot subdivision concept, believing that Mike had a 30-acre, single 30-acre parcel. He believed that, we believed that, that's what we found on the GIS server. That's what we got from the county. But we found this 1990 plan, and it turns out that the town had this plan on record. So, but essentially, that's where we started. Simple 3-lot subdivision, a lot for Mike's house, which exists, I don't know if you're aware, exists up and back. A lot for us, which we're trying to build a house next to our apartment building that we own. And then this other lot for housing, essentially, so.
it's a good thing.
So we started with a subdivision application, 3 lots, very simple. And we've had to kind of go around the barn to get back to it.
Because the driveway for the new lot would be off the water, the one road that's a non-road.
The housing
Right.
The existing, yeah.
would,
Yeah,
would be
it's
on.
existing
would be
next to
on
the golf
gravel
course,
drive. Yeah, yeah.
Because that's where we were talking last time, because does that have to be up to code, is all that?
Yeah, so I think we talked last time about we could develop up to 4 units and call it a driveway. It would still be in driveway standards.
That's where the
And then-
boxes.
So Mike
Right
may
here's where
opt
the red
to
boxes.
build 4
Okay.
units and then have that be phase 1, retain the
Mhm.
driveway, and then maybe go back to ZBA, or maybe just improve the driveway, bring it up to road standards at that point to build remaining units. But we're finding that, I think conservatively, we could do 10 homes here.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And maybe with some sewage easements and things, we could do much more. So, we need to kind of go back and huddle up with the team and understand what the lot loading is on lot 2 and what the site will actually support. But I think Mike is very much in favor of doing more units. He also wants to develop to fit the character of the layout too, and not
Right.
be, visually obtrusive. And, I mean, he's gonna look at it from his home, and
right,
you'll see some of it from the highway, so I think it's a good approach. I think it should fit, when you do housing that doesn't fit the character of a place, it can kind of carry a stigma too, like there's the affordable housing project. So I think it's a good approach. So I have some concepts here, but I'm not sure we're quite ready to get into subdivision and housing concepts yet.
probably not, because we're still wanting to stay informal.
Yeah,
I guess the question, and I think Jerry knows more about this stuff than all the rest of us sitting here. What you can and cannot do is pays attention to that, which is really good. And he advised me that you can do both things all at once. Sarah?
Be two separate steps, so you can do them simultaneously.
yeah.
At the same meeting.
So we're thinking it's two applications
Right.
Yes,
that
but
we
you can do them all
We can do it
the,
at the same time.
together.
we
Yeah.
can
Good.
look at them all at once instead of like, we don't have to do a serial
Yeah,
process.
that's important.
Yeah.
We save us at least a month.
Yep.
So it's good.
And for any septic, like alternative septic, you start with the state first, get their blessing. And they've in a conference I went to, they said they really are very willing to work with people to, advance housing. But then many times through the conference, the guy kept saying, topography is fate.
Topography is fate.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it. I mean, there's a, you know, there's the lot loading calculations and the soil calculations and the, you know, the density calculation essentially for the lot, but there's also the character of the land and what the land can fit, you know, so, and septic is gonna factor into that, and what we can do, so. That's my update for tonight. I think those are my questions, really. Kate, did you have any other questions? We did talk about, there are no, I know in the checklist, it asked for any known deed restrictions on the land. And I think the idea of that is any current deed restrictions on, and there are none that we're aware of. But we would probably be looking at creating some sewage easements. But I think those would be proposed easements, essentially, that we probably bring forward with subdivision plans, so. And just making sure that we're understanding that correctly.
Then the one home for yourself.
Yep.
And then how many other buildings?
So our home, the intention is to be on a separate lot, so it's kind of isolated.
Right.
And then we're looking at conservatively, I'd say 9 units, 9 to 10 units.
And how many square feet roughly units?
He'd like to do 2-bedroom
Good.
homes.
Yeah.
And we've been talking, you know, kind of off the record, well, we're on the record, but
That was.
we've been talking about different housing typologies. So maybe instead of doing a multifamily building, maybe we do smaller homes, smaller individual homes. And maybe trying to do a little bit of a mix, a light mix, and just generally high-level concept that I've been kind of talking to Mike about is this idea of like a pocket neighborhood, if you're familiar with that at all, but it's when you kind of cluster some homes around a common and they kind of share some of the infrastructure instead of doing like individual driveways to every home and, you know, individual infrastructure in a longer road, you know, it just costs more. So that's kind of the concept. I think and Mike's been great to work with. He's forward.
Could it be all rental or mixed rental and sale?
That's a good question. I think I don't know how much to share on the record, but
That's
you know,
fine.
Mike has manager.
So yes.
Certainly rental. You know what I mean?
The question is premature.
Mike has different needs, different employees, and you know, I think he probably keeps options open before we get to the table. But
Yeah, we don't really want to hear that or see that at this point.
yeah, we'll have. It's going to be a good plan. I'm confident in it. So
We're supposed to have only a napkin here with some lines.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit more.
yeah, that's okay.
Good job.
No, look forward to it.
Yeah. So no concerns at this point? Any other questions or? So we hope to come next month with a full set of plans and we'd be seeking approval for the lot line adjustment and the lot merger.
So come in formally, make sure you dot your i's and cross your t's.
Yep.
That'll be the formal on the record.
What's that?
That'll be the formal on the record.
Yes, yeah.
And then we'll ask all kinds of questions.
Sure. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Nice job.
Thanks.
We appreciate you asking.
Yeah. It's good. Jackson needs housing. Needs housing. You know, it's a tourism economy, but we need people to work in the places that people like to be.
You are preaching to the choir.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, folks.
Thanks.
You live in a house that was not designed for rental, so it was sold, could turn into a rental.
Yes.
And so that's
Good night.
the questions coming
You're
from
right.
the floor.
All right.
Okay. All right. Short-term rental applications.
Yeah, moving on to our favorite subject. So, as always, there's always a somewhat new one, interesting concept. This week, the first one, the Wadsworth, is actually a conditional use permit short-term rental application that had already been approved, but there's new owners to the house. So the new
New
owners,
application.
new application, but the house itself has been approved for short-term rental.
So does that come before us?
That's the question I had, but it's a new application.
Right, but that, we've already given our blessing to it.
Yeah, to me that seems administrative.
That's what I thought.
That's what it is, it's administrative, it has to.
We want new names on the,
Right, they filled out a whole new application, new tax card for them, new contact person. It's just, the structure itself already has a conditional use permit to be used.
So it's just a new name on the affidavit, that
That's it.
everything is okay.
So we can accept the application, right? I think we can accept that.
I know, but it's just the first time.
Yeah, it's
reading.
fine.
I mean, in the future, it might.
Did they meet all the requirements?
Yes, they did.
Well, then-
Actually, they're better than the requirements. They are,
More conforming?
more. Yes, more conforming.
You know where you find that from, yeah, I'll say.
That's not allowed, we're sorry, less conforming, we, no.
Yes, it is. They actually have 4 bedrooms, but they advertise 3. Okay, so we'll accept that one. So do I have a motion? This is number 1, the Matthew Wadsworth Manhattan on Carter Notch Road.
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
All in favor to accept?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're good. Next.
The next one is a new one, so they'll be limited to their 30 limits. This one is John Robbins on 32 Ridge Road. Oh no, this is the one that advertises 3 bedrooms, sleep 7, but they actually have a tax card for 4 bedrooms. So again, all the other application documents are signed correctly, and they have a license, and all of that. Anybody knows where Ridge Road is?
Move to accept.
A motion to accept, a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wow, we've really caught up our time. That's good. That's good.
Favorite topic.
Capital improvement program. First thing I'm going to ask is, are there any updates? Because I asked that last time, and we got updates on a couple of things, but we didn't get an update entirely on all the things. So, any updates?
The only update that I have is, and I don't remember who was doing the town buildings, like the Whitney Center. But the person over at the Whitney Center sent something to Barb, who gave it to me to present to you guys, about looking for review and research building short-term, long-term improvement costs, about $30,000. It's for electronic equipment for the Whitney Center. Audio-visual challenges that they have. They'd like to research and have a building a short, long-term improvement plan for, and looking at about $30,000 for the Whitney Center. So that's
Some of that would come from the Whitney Fund.
Whitney Fund.
There is, Betty Whitney left, I don't know what the legal entity is, but has the money, and it is being managed by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. And it is, and the way they work is take a running average as to what is being earned by the investments, and there is a check that comes out every year, which goes to the school, and part of it goes to the Friends of the Whitney Community Community Center for programming. And then there's also the other third goes to, for maintenance of this. So I don't know how much of that money would be available to go toward this. And the committee is in the process of finding out what's available, how much it costs, what we need. and so on.
Yeah, he was unclear if it was the town, the school, the Whitney Center, or the
The Whitney
Whitney
Center
Foundation.
School.
Yeah, or some or all of the above.
Yeah, he was like,
Right.
Yeah.
so Barbara wasn't sure if this should go into the capital improvement for the town building, because the town is responsible for
At this point, it is just research, finding out information.
it.
Still,
But it's useful to footnote it and say,
Right.
yeah, here it is, and put a placeholder and say, okay. 'Cause I think there are gonna be some other things that we have that, you know, we'll look at and say, okay, who's gonna fund it? And it may not be the town
Right.
that actually is the,
The bottom line is whether it's a school funding or town property,
you know,
taxpayer funds it.
right, and that, for all I've read about the capital improvements program, yes, we're advising the select board for capital improvements, but we are also acting on behalf of the town taxpayers in terms of identifying, and some come around to our conversation, end of our conversation last meeting, is that part of our responsibility is to ensure that when we, whatever we're looking at, takes a look at what the tax implications are and how we're going to fund some of those improvements, whether or not it's a bond fund or whether or not something we reserve, and determine. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now, is getting to the point where we start identifying, here are the things that we ought to be looking at. Here's what the dollar amounts are attached to those. Here are the programs we currently have in place. Here's the areas that we don't currently have any kind of funding process to manage. And then try to come up with a recommendation as to what things we ought to prioritize, and what things ought to be funded in the near term and longer term. Because we're looking at presumably a 10-year window.
Is it at all possible to look at, like the tax implication historically? Like previous capital improvements plans and what impact, towns accepted? What's what is the trend, or what is the common? Give some context.
Yeah, I guess the closest context would be the town garage, that.
Right, but when we last did a capital improvements plan, is there any way to?
Oh, you're talking about the plan itself?
Right, because the plan covers a lot of different
Right.
things. When we did it last time, is there any way to, and not directly, but somehow correlate it with some sort of tax increase that was acceptable at least?
I'm not quite sure how we would do it.
I know it's all mixed. And I don't
One of
know.
the things we might want to consider is extreme weather, how it would affect, like, I'm thinking of Route 4 in Vermont. That's state road, obviously, and we have state roads in Jackson. If there were washouts or culvert
Well,
failures.
we're not used to so much rain, and we have so many steep dirt
Right.
driveways.
And
And they're all washing out.
The mudslide, was it in Ohio, they had a severe mudslide? We don't know what the weather is going to throw at us, and it seems like it gets more and more extreme, the systems get larger and larger. I mean, look at what happened in Wildcat River, what was it, 4 weeks ago? That was close to pushing over the banks. Maybe washing out the bridge. Which, by the way, the bridge project on Wilson, the Valley Cross Road, went from 2 million to 4 million. And just,
When did we learn that one?
that's
Just
the last
recently.
selectmen's meeting. And the town's portion, the 20% states still 80, is a little over 400,000, I think 411. And believe it or not, we have that much money already put aside for it. I mean, that's, and also an addendum to that was that the design, engineering, spec writing for the bid came under, just under 400,000 for a $2 million project. 400,000. No doors, no electricity, no plumbing. We're talking about building a $7 million firehouse, possibly. What would the engineering be for that? And there's been no request for any engineering study whatsoever yet. And I pointed that out to the selectmen, and they thought that they would have to do something about that.
What we're going to present to the town is information, is that correct? We're going to create a document that just lists the things that we've thought about and possibly what they would cost. Now, if I was interested in the solar aspect, to put something before the town, I'd have to craft that up on my own or get signatures. Is that correct? I mean, that would be a separate entity from the capital improvements.
I guess the question is, they did give us some money to spend to flush out some of the things that we might do. And so there are some opportunities there if we agree as a group that that's a priority and that we want to recommend something, and in order to recommend it, we need to do some work that requires some expenditure. So,
That'd be a good place to do it.
if we all agree that that's something we want to do, and we want to put a priority on it, then I would say in order to stick a number on it, you're going to have to do some work. Obviously, we're not going to spend $400,000 to look at the fire station and to figure out whether or not we want to spend $7 million. But we should be doing some work on doing some kind of understanding of what that means, even if it's estimating the estimates.
I mean, that was my point to the selectmen, is that they needed to do some independent, not the fire department, independent review that would include engineering and spec writing.
And my comment last week was based on how that thing was proceeding. It just, we can't move forward without properly planning how an expense is going to fit into our overall budgeting process and what our priorities are. It costs money to run a town, but we're not Conway. I'll use that. I hope they quoted us. We're not Jackson.
Right.
We're not Conway. We don't have the opportunity to draw from a very large tax base. We have a smaller tax base. And so if we're going to make large expenditures, we need to make sure that fits within our ability to pay and fits within our overall arc of development in town. And I don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, other than I know in my own personal budget, I don't plan on doing things that I can't afford. And I know that if I have a large expenditure, I know I can borrow money to meet that requirement and, you know, amortize it over a longer period. But I still have to be able to pay the monies in over that period of years. And if I'm doing one thing, that means I can't do another thing. I can't do all 12 things that might be on a potential wish list.
Opportunity cost.
And it's an opportunity cost, and it's, so we need to really, that I think is part of what our job is, really as a planning board, is to talk about opportunity costs and what things we think are best suited for putting our dollars in and identifying, as you say, what's the impact going to be on a tax rate, and you know, what's our willingness to spend, what's our ability to spend. I mean, I don't want my tax bill to go double. I don't think anybody in the room
And
would
that's
sign
what-
up for that.
But I think specifically to Dick's question, who would properly identify where the opportunities for solar would be, and then what would they cost?
Didn't we have a study done a long time ago?
Well, I've got some pretty good information. It's just that, so my feeling is, it's the one place that has payback. Everything else we talk about is gonna be money out. When we talk about a new fire department isn't gonna lower our homeowners' insurance. It's necessary, you know, something is necessary, but I'm not gonna argue that. The solar is the one place that we're actually gonna get some payback. So I just wanted to get clear on where that would go, you know, kind of.
When you say solar, do you mean the town using solar for the town office, or do you mean putting it?
Well, we've already
Solar
got it
farm.
here, but I'm thinking about the application at the Whitney. It's the one roof line that's almost perfect. You know, it's an old barn,
But solar is served town properties.
yes,
Okay.
solar on town property.
So wouldn't that be the Board of Selectmen proposing that as part of the budget?
Well, that's why, should I just bring it to them at the next meeting or something and say, you know, it's gonna be, say, put aside $200,000.
That would be a capital improvement, right?
Yeah, to me, that's
How about the
capital
dump
improvement.
the old dark side?
If you're talking about taking town funds, and even though it's paid back, I mean, that to me, that's kind of a no-brainer.
You know?
But it's also, we're putting money up front.
Yeah, you gotta put the money up front to get it, so.
And that's one where it pays you back instead of the other way around.
Right,
Um,
and so over time,
Most of the other ones, you're right, we're gonna put money out and, or we're gonna buy something and we still have to keep on paying it.
yeah, all right, I mean, so anyway, I'm just trying to figure out how to, you know, make a reasonable proposal out of some of this. I mean, we should certainly tag it on to the capital improvement plan. I mean, it should be part of it. But then, if we want to head for it at the next town meeting, it really has to get firmed up into a warrant article. But that wouldn't come from us, that would either come from the selectmen
Petition.
Their agent.
or a bunch of citizens.
Yeah, and that gets again to our timing of all this.
The way the capital improvements program was approached when we did it before was that you gathered all the various projects that were desired by various parts of the government and got an approximate cost of them. And then your goal was to try to even out the tax rate for the upcoming years, so that for some projects, if it was a higher priority, you would then put more money into that. But the whole idea was to set up capital reserve funds that you would add to each year. And And so if you have some, like if solar is a high priority, then you would then set aside more of that tax money for that initially. And so it's the way you would, the plan would then be saying, these are the projects we want to get done, and this is when they would be getting done, and we need to accumulate the money for them, you know, incrementally over whatever time frame you're talking about. And so it just is looking at all the projects, so you're not hit with, you know, like we were recently hit with big ask for money for the school and a big ask for money for the fire department. And everybody said, whoa, wait, capital improvements plan would have taken those projects plus the other smaller ones and then had it all worked out as to how they could be accomplished without having huge spikes in the tax rate.
So is the process that if we as a planning board come up with that plan, we then and give that as a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen then either, you know, incorporates parts or all of it into the budget.
Because the
Some
plan
of
itself
those,
is
some
not,
of those things should be incorporated in the master plan as well.
Right.
Or you draw from the master plan as well in terms of creating the capital improvement.
In some ways, you'd like to have the master plan done before you do the capital improvement program, but we're kind of
Well,
a little bit of
master
part.
plan
That's
goes
chicken and
forward.
egg issue. But yes.
But yes,
Which may mean we have to look at this again another 5 years instead of another 10 years.
I mean, realistically, the elephant in the room is still the fire department, but how we want to make a recommendation on that if we do it all, which I think we should.
And
so, am I correct that the last time we did this was 2009? That is the most recent.
I think that's last report, that's the last report I could find. But, and then after that, the selectmen said, oh, that they'd be doing it themselves. And
Because here they have an interesting talk about, and I don't know if it's part of the RSA, and it's supposed to be part of it, but they do this anticipated effect on a tax bill, and they do this. It says a tax base of $330 million tax base here is evaluation. Any expense on this, now it would have to be recalculated and save money, but they say any expense of $10,000 or more raises property tax on an assessed property of $200,000 by $6. So you can kind of use that as your formula that if any project is X, every 10,000 would raise it by this, which would allow people to make that kind of.
Well, Julie Atwell did a study of what it would be currently, and Emily Benson is involved in reviewing what the funding outside the normal New Hampshire bank funding for bonds, what it would be available and what the different rates would be. And she hoped to present it as a last selectmen's meeting, but the people who prepared it were either on vacation. Anyway, it was unavailable. And she's working on it. I don't know what numbers she's using, but she's trying.
But that would
With
at least,
respect to fire.
but that would give it, I mean, but this they use it for, it's not just anything, it's any project in here that was $10,000 or more.
But that was at those days' rates.
No, I said it would have to be updated, but using that kind of mentality, because people say, well, what's it gonna affect my taxes? Well, if you're X, if your house is valued at X.
Those numbers exist. Julie did a full research on those. They're available.
Well, you have that number from last year's annual report, I believe, but it's not updated for what this year's report is.
One of the things that, with respect to opportunity costs, is that, again, I'll go back to the issue of weather calamities. There's no way we can predict that. But, and again, Emily Benson would be where to go for this question I have. What emergency facilities do you have in town to house people? If something, you know, arises or people either can't get to their homes or are forced to leave them because of energy issues, you know, power outages or flooding or road washing out, whatever.
I think Emily presented something at either last year's
Yeah,
town meeting.
and it was
was the
with
Whitney
respect to the
Center.
Whitney Center,
Is she finally got
because they
approved for
they
that?
have emergency power there,
Right.
but I think, and
What's
this
the
is something
price?
we need to nail down, and I heard the number, but I don't want to say it because I'm not certain of it, how many people could actually be bedded
Right.
into there. And I think the town garage was also an opportunity.
Well, I know that they have all, that the library board signed off on making use of the library as an emergency facility as well, but not for extensive,
Right.
like overnight stays or anything like
Right.
that, but just as a shelter.
But I guess what I'm alluding to is that I don't know how, or, again, these are opportunity costs, I guess, that, as you said, there's some things you have to plan for more immediately than others. But, you know, A, what that would look like, and B, what it would cost,
Yep.
and is it, you know, is it, some of the planning ahead might be increasing the size of culverts in town roads. And I know that the washouts just on Tin Mine were fairly extensive. And the town road agent has not been able to get any paving done because the pavers are
Busy.
not straight.
Yeah.
And so those, I guess what I'm saying is that how do we plan for that? And how should it be budgeted into a capital improvement plan?
Yeah, and while we're on that vein, library lost their heat pump and learned that we have no reserve fund anywhere in our budget for any repairs to any building. So if we end up having, if the heat pump goes out here on this building, there's no funds anywhere in the budget. I mean, obviously, the select board has the opportunity to move things,
We
but
do have tax anticipation, I don't feel what bank, what bank is it? They have a tax anticipation note. Yeah. I mean, so, again, I don't know how those things would be funded. Those are certain issues, I guess, but I think it's something that we should be thinking about in the capital improvement plan, is how to prepare for weather or other type of
what kind of capital reserve you want to put for that, yeah.
like for the highway department, for
Yep,
example.
yeah.
I know we have a capital reserve fund for them,
Right, but then even on that budget discussions, earlier this year, there wasn't any, and I think you may have brought it up, and I think, I know I talked about, is we needed to put monies into the reserve fund. We have one, but we hadn't been funding it
but
for.
probably, yeah.
for-
About 5 years ago, it was planned that we put 100,000 a year into it. That got cut back to, I think, 45 or something this year. I suggested that they boost it, so I think they boosted it to 95.
Yeah, they bumped it by 50, whatever it was, so, yeah. But it had dropped off because somehow we don't need any money for any repairs all of a sudden, and it's like, yeah,
Nothing's ever gonna go wrong.
no, everything is wonderful, and we live in paradise, and that's true, but, you know, things do go wrong even in paradise. Okay, my question for you guys is, how do you want to proceed on this? Okay, we talked and talked and talked, but we got to do some work. And we have to get some numbers, and we have to start doing this prioritization process. How do you want to do it? You want to do a work session? Do you want to take our whole deal for a meeting and do that? Or how are we going to do this? What are we going to do that? Where are we going to pull our numbers from?
Can we combine what we have so far in some way? We have the materials that come up with it. Here's a list of what we've come up with so far.
Sure, I mean, it's right in the annual report. I mean, it's a good starting point.
Well, and I meant what we've, the research we've been doing.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
You know,
I think
oh, we got
so.
the fire station.
Building on what Sarah said about prioritizing, maybe we could talk about what we would prioritize with whatever the town is thinking. I mean, I'm thinking, again, the elephant in the room is the fire department. Is that something that you would think could be prioritized in terms of our discussion of it? What we would suggest?
Well, I think if you're gonna prioritize a list, you have to have a list first. So I would think that'd be number one, is to just make a list of.
And we talked about trying to do that in this room,
Right.
with a board or something, and just start writing things down to get a list of all the things. And I think what you're talking about is we start putting down on paper all the things you're talking about, just throwing it up.
Right, the
Yeah.
list.
That's a good way to start.
And potentially, if we know any dollars, put it up there next to it.
I mean, to me, the fire department, even though that's the big thing, it's already a thing,
Yeah.
you know, and it's, to me, it's out of our hand at this point.
Well,
We can make comments, but, you know, it's up to, at this point, the fire department and the board of selectmen to come up with a plan, to reach out to the community, you know, to gain support for everything.
But we could suggest,
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I also feel that if we don't make comment on it and they go forward and they anticipate a $7 million thing, and we're looking at it and saying, okay, $7 million means everything else we prioritize is gonna have to wait 10 or 15 or 20 years,
the opportunity cost.
then we might as well just go home now and say, gee, thanks a lot, we did a capital improvement program, we looked at it, but all our opportunity to buy is gonna be eaten up by the fire department.
I'm gonna give you an example. When the selectmen, who were the selectmen at the time, were talking about a town garage, they among themselves couldn't agree on a spot. They couldn't agree on what the building should look like. One of them was suggesting a big tent kind of thing. And they were talking about out on Route 16, a lot of places so anyway, they put a number together, a neighborhood of, let's say, 300,000. I can't remember the number exactly. And they put it to the town. They said,
You couldn't build an ADU.
we can't tell you what we're going to build. We can't tell you where we're going to build it. Just give us 300,000. It got defeated roundly.
Just like-
But then the next group of selectmen came in, picked a spot, picked a building, had the design cost done, went to the town, said, here's where the building's going to be. This is what it's going to look like, and this is what it's going to cost. It got approved.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I mean, we have to put it on, we have to have our comments, our 2 cents into whatever we're gonna do. Let the chips fall where they may, once we make our recommendations.
And again, we aren't making the pitch to the electorate, we're making our recommendation to the select board. And it's their job then to take what we've given them and to take a look at it and see how they're gonna play with it.
In a sense, we're doing the research that they need to do to decide on
Not even
budgets.
close. We're not even coming close to the research that they need to
Well-
do.
What I'm saying is that,
But we need to make a recommendation as to what their approach should be.
I think, go ahead, Sarah, what you're gonna say.
well, that you have to decide how you're going to spread out your expenditures and try to get the tax for it. And it's, you know, a job it takes some time, and the select board has an awful lot of issues that they have to deal with on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis. And this particular job has been then delegated to the planning board to help them and do some of the figuring as to how the money can be allotted. And so we'll figure something out that seems to work to keep the tax a rate fairly level, and then it's up to them to work when they develop the budget.
And also just recommend the priorities. I mean,
Yeah.
that, to your point, and that is that if we don't recommend the priorities, then the select board can go off willy-nilly and say, well, this is important to me, and so we're going to do this, as opposed to looking at something that the planning board has looked at and said, you know, based on what our understanding is, and because we've actually taken the time to look at it and ask for input, we believe this is the order of which these things should be addressed. If they don't want to do that, they can do whatever the heck they want.
Sarah, is what you're suggesting that we make some recommendation in terms of rough dollars for each department that you would think of?
No, I'm just going by the way it was handled last time, that it was, the whole job was given to the planning board. And that was, members of the planning board did, is what we've done is to go out to the different departments and say, okay, what is it, what capital expenses do you anticipate you're going to need, and what, and you know, both your needs and your wants. And then bring that back, and instead of just going by department, then take all that information, put it together, and see what you come out with as to, you know, what the expenses are, and what they feel, like the department feels that, for example, is that the police need to upgrade their cruisers every so many years. And so that just got programmed in, and it's still the way they do it. And so other things that may not be recurring the way a police cruiser is, but like getting the town garage built, and various other projects that have occurred in town since then. Part of that was because of the planning board had set out for this selectmen how you could do with capital reserve funds. You could then accumulate the money so that by the time you do the actual job, that you have the money for it, and it's not a big hit onto the tax rate.
And the flip side of that, I think, is also about funding, you know, as to when should we bond an item.
And I wasn't suggesting we not recommend and comment on something like the fire department, but it's sort of reverse. It's not us going to the fire department and saying, what would you like? They give us a wish list, we go through that and then move that forward. It's us addressing something that's already gone around us.
Yeah.
The only thing I disagree with is it shouldn't be what they want or what they would like to have, but what the town needs.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying.
That's right. I mean,
Is you have the needs.
I just meant that normally, we would go to the fire department, they would give us, here's what we need, here's what we'd like.
And
We
they can.
then work with them. to move
That
forward.
actually has been done.
That actually has happened.
What we need is a hard copy of everything we've talked, all the areas we've talked about. Then we're going to plug in facts and figures. Then we can put it on a timeline and say, okay, if we want to smooth this thing out, here's what we think should happen over this period of time. But we have to get that hard copy first of, what are we talking about? Because we get going, we talk round and round. If we have it and we take out a section and say, okay, here are the figures, then we can say, okay, this is how it impacts your tax bill.
Yep.
If we raise $2 million for some project, and we amortize it out, this is what it is going to cost you. You know, and we'll try to hold our taxes down to no more than, what, $2 more a thousand or something, you know.
So I will have,
So basically, we have a
Two minutes.
guide to go by.
Yeah. We need the guy. We
Yeah,
need
so,
the
so,
guy.
so,
Okay.
so
Appropriate.
next steps then, I guess my question is, I agree with you. First off, I agree with you. So then how do we accomplish that task, I guess is the next question. Is that something we do with a subgroup that puts that together and we have it available for our next meeting? Or is that something we agree to have a working session, everybody, and we start, hammering it out? What do you want to do? I mean, we got to do something. We have some work to do, I guess is my point.
I think
How about a work
Dave was
session?
trying to say,
Yeah,
step
the
number
work
one.
should, I don't want to divide up the group, I think.
I think a work
A work
session,
session is a good idea.
and not doing it at the tail end of the planning board meeting when we're already slightly burnt out.
I mean, a work session, it has to be noticed.
No, a meeting, but just when we do it at a regular planning board meeting, by the time we get to it, we've already done the short-term
Right.
rentals and the stuff.
Well, we
that's
can
on
have
the
work, we
agenda.
can have a work session to accomplish what Dick was suggesting. And it kind of parallels what Sarah was suggesting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Get the list, as Dave was
I try
trying
to
to
get
say
the list
twice.
outside of the planning, because I think, I'm sorry, if we try to put a list together in this room, we will go in 18 different directions and talk about 18,000 different things.
No, I don't think the list will.
I think it will.
Well,
I think we
how
come
about,
with a
how about we
list.
do have some prep work prior to the work session?
Yes,
Maybe someone
It's-
might,
I will put the
Always
list together based
easier.
on the minutes.
To start with a draft. If
Right.
David can go ahead and just from the minutes,
From the
everything we've talked about,
Yep.
just make a list, and then we can work on that.
Correct.
Take that as a start.
Create the list would be impossible.
I think that's,
I think we have a plan.
But
But we have to
I-
schedule a work session, and
I
so the
second.
question is that going to be, that's gotta be different than our regular monthly meeting? And then, between now and whenever, when is that gonna happen?
So our next meeting is,
Someone's like,
we'll look at 2 weeks to put
next
the,
meeting is September 14th.
Okay, and I will not be at that meeting. I'll be in Iceland.
Excuse me? You know, they have it.
Iceland? They don't have it. No.
how about next week, same time?
yeah,
same station?
within the next couple of weeks, we should do the work session, just to see what we can hammer out.
Yeah.
And then whatever.
And
date-
see how far off we are. I mean,
So
we're
let's
we're really,
say 2 weeks from tonight is the
if we're going
24th.
crazy, we'll figure out something else to approach it.
Okay, let's,
24th.
yeah, just, and make sure we notice it.
That'll give me enough time to get a notice out that we're doing it. And the notice will be that it is a working session,
Right.
so no other agenda
This
items.
building and the post office,
Yeah.
that's really what we need.
And the good thing about work sessions, we don't have to, if the public can come,
Yep.
but we don't have to recognize them.
Right.
This is our work session. We're here to talk to,
Trust me, Dick, I don't recognize most of the people that come in this.
And you'll do a rough draft of the file.
And we've done this before. We have good record of doing work sessions, and getting things done, so
Just so we notice it, that's not on the.
it could happen
it
again.
could actually happen again.
Yeah, it's interesting, you have this big flood in Sid Mine you guys are talking about. Did you know in 2009,
Make a motion?
we allocated, according to this, $160,000 per year to fix all the roads in this town by mile? Every year, we were gonna fix
Yeah,
1 mile. And Tin Mine was on that list because of the flooding on Tin Mine Road back in 2008.
There you go.
So the flooding on in Tin Mine is not a new thing.
Yeah. And we didn't keep,
We didn't do it.
and we didn't keep to it. Yeah.
I would be
And that's,
interested to go
that's
see.
it. Well, that was a recommendation versus what the select board chose to do. And so that,
$160,000 per year for approximately 1 mile a year of road reconstruction.
I remember that.
Yeah. My son and Jay worked that out. Those numbers.
all right.
I'd like to make a motion.
I have a motion, yes.
I already seconded it.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I think
So Thursday, the 20th.